Hello and welcome to the Whispering Worlds channel. Have you ever faced a moment when your world fell apart, only to realize that it was the start of something new? Dive into the gripping story of Daniel Carter, a devoted father navigating the fallout of betrayal by those he trusted most. But this is more than just a tale. It's an invitation to walk in Daniel's shoes. Your thoughts, perspectives, and insights can shape the way this family rebuilds their lives. What choices would you make when love and trust are on the line? How would you find hope in the midst of heartbreak? The aroma of roasted garlic and marinara sauce filled the kitchen as I stirred the bubbling pot of spaghetti. Family dinners were always sacred, a tradition Maria and I upheld religiously since the kids were born. Today was no different, or so I thought. "Daddy, can we have ice cream after dinner?" asked Lily, my 8-year-old, her wide blue eyes sparkling with innocence. She was perched on a stool, swinging her legs back and forth. "If you finish all your spaghetti," I said, smiling. Jake, my 10-year-old, looked up from his math homework spread across the table. "I'm not eating the mushrooms," he muttered, wrinkling his nose. I chuckled. "You'll eat them, or no ice cream for you either." Maria walked into the kitchen, her heels clicking softly against the tiles. She looked radiant, as always, long brunette hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing that teal dress I loved. But tonight, there was something off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and she seemed distracted. "Dinner smells great," she said, planting a brief kiss on my cheek before pouring herself a glass of red wine. "I'm heading out later, just for a bit." "Out? On a Tuesday night?" I asked, trying to mask my surprise. She hesitated, glancing at her phone before responding. "Yeah, just catching up with Greg. He had some work stuff he wanted to discuss." "Greg, my friend. My best friend since college." I smiled tightly, trying to ignore the faint pang of unease in my chest. "Work stuff, huh? Sounds serious." Maria shrugged. "He's going through a rough patch with the new project. You know how he gets." I nodded, brushing the feeling aside. Greg was like a brother to me, and Maria had always been supportive of my friends. There was no reason to overthink it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine, but the unease didn't go away. Maria's dinners with Greg became more frequent. She always had an excuse: work deadlines, errands, catching up, but it wasn't like her to be this absent. One night, after tucking the kids into bed, I decided to speak up. She was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Maria," I said, trying to sound casual as I sat down beside her. "You've been spending a lot of time with Greg lately. Is everything okay?" She looked up, startled, her thumb pausing mid-scroll. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be? I don't know. It just seems different." Maria sighed, placing her phone down. "Daniel, you're reading too much into it. Greg is your friend. I'm just helping him out." "Helping him out?" I pressed. "Yes, he's going through a rough time. You've known him for years. He doesn't have anyone else." I nodded slowly, though the pit in my stomach grew heavier. "All right, I trust you." Her smile was quick, almost forced. "Good. You should." The turning point came one Saturday morning when Maria was in the shower. I was cleaning up the kitchen when her phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it instinctively. A message preview from Greg. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you." My heart stopped. The words blurred as a rush of anger, confusion, and hurt surged through me. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling, and read the full thread. It was undeniable: flirty messages, inside jokes, plans to meet at odd hours. My world spun, threatening to collapse around me. Maria walked in, towel drying her hair, and froze when she saw me holding her phone. "Daniel," she said, her voice low and panicked. "What are you doing?" I held up the phone, my voice shaking with controlled fury. "What is this?" Her face went pale, the color draining in an instant. "I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me? That you and Greg—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "It's not what you think," she said quickly, stepping closer. "Please, just let me." "Not what I think?" I snapped, my voice rising. How long, Maria? How long has this been going on? Tears welled in her eyes, and she clutched the edge of the counter. It's not like that. It's just complicated. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Complicated. That's all you've got. She broke then, the tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't mean for this to happen, Daniel. I didn't. But I can't lie to you anymore. I have feelings for him. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. So that's it, I whispered. You're throwing away everything we've built? For him? I don't know, she whispered back. I'm so sorry. Sorry. The word felt hollow, meaningless. That night, I slept on the couch. My thoughts were a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and disbelief. The woman I had loved and trusted for over a decade had betrayed me. Not just with anyone, but with Greg. As dawn broke, I made a decision. This wasn't something I could forgive or fix. My kids deserved better, and so did I. It was time to take the first step toward rebuilding my life. I parked outside Greg's apartment complex, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The morning sunlight filtered through the windshield, but the warmth did nothing to thaw the cold rage sitting heavy in my chest. The night before had been sleepless. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maria's face, heard her broken admission echoing in my mind. I needed answers. I needed closure. And I needed to hear it from Greg himself. I climbed the steps to his apartment with a determination I hadn't felt in years. My knocks on his door were loud and relentless. Coming! Greg's familiar voice called out. When he opened the door, his expression shifted from casual surprise to wary caution in an instant. Daniel, he said, his voice uncertain. What's going on? You tell me? I snapped, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Greg closed the door behind me and crossed his arms, trying to mask his unease. What's this about? I turned to face him, my anger barely contained. Cut the act, Greg. I know. About you and Maria. His eyes widened slightly before he looked away, guilt flickering across his face. That was all the confirmation I needed. How could you? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and hurt. You were supposed to be my best friend. My brother. Daniel, Don't you dare try to justify this. I interrupted. How long has it been going on? Greg sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. A few months, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. A few months? I repeated, letting the words sink in. You've been sneaking around with my wife for months, and you didn't think I'd find out? It wasn't planned, he said defensively. It just happened. Maria and we connected in a way I didn't expect. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You didn't mean for it to go this far? I echoed, my voice rising. That's your excuse? You betrayed me, Greg. You betrayed my trust, my family. Do you even understand what you've done? Greg flinched, but he didn't look away. I'm sorry, Daniel. I really am. But Maria, she's not happy. She hasn't been happy for a long time. The words hit me like a slap. So this is my fault now? You think this justifies what you did? That's not what I'm saying, he said quickly. But maybe if you looked at your own marriage, you'd see. I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw before I even realized what I was doing. Greg stumbled back, clutching his face in shock. Don't you dare try to pin this on me, I growled. You don't get to lecture me about my marriage when you've been stabbing me in the back. Greg straightened, wiping a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth. I deserve that, he said quietly. I deserve worse. You're damn right you do. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. We're done, Greg. Don't come near me and don't come near my kids. You don't exist to me anymore. He didn't try to stop me. Back home, the house was eerily quiet. The kids were at school, and Maria was in the kitchen, her face pale and drawn. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red from crying. Did you talk to him? She asked softly. I did. She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as though trying to hold herself together. What happens now? I looked at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and felt nothing but emptiness. I'm filing for divorce, I said, the words coming out colder than I intended. Maria's face crumpled, and she sank into a chair. Daniel, please, can we talk about this? For the kids. For the kids, I repeated, incredulous. You think this is what's best for them? Watching their parents pretend everything's fine when it's not. I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. But I still love you. I shook my head. If you loved me, Maria, this wouldn't have happened. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed our family. And I can't come back from that. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. I wanted to feel pity for her, to offer her some comfort, but I couldn't. My heart had nothing left to give. That evening, I sat with Lily and Jake in the living room, their laughter a balm to my wounded soul. We were watching their favorite movie, the one with the singing animals, and for a few hours, I let myself forget the chaos unraveling around me. As I tucked them into bed later, Jake looked up at me, his brow furrowed. Dad, is everything okay? He asked. I hesitated, unsure how much to tell him. Things are a little tough right now, buddy. But I promise, no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you and Lily. He nodded, his small hand gripping mine tightly. I love you, Dad. I love you too, I said, my throat tightening. As I closed the door to their room, I leaned against the wall, letting out a shaky breath. My life was falling apart, but for their sake, I had to hold it together. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and coffee, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos swirling inside me. I sat in the stiff chair, staring at the stack of papers in front of me. Divorce, a word that felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's life. Mr. Carter? Lauren Michaels, my attorney, prompted gently. I looked up at her, her professional demeanor a calming presence. Her tailored suit and sharp glasses exuded competence, but her eyes were warm and understanding. Sorry, I said, clearing my throat. This just doesn't feel real yet. Lauren nodded. That's normal. Divorce is a significant life change, and the emotions can be overwhelming. But remember, this process is about protecting your rights and ensuring the best outcome for you and your children. My children. The thought of Lily and Jake strengthened my resolve. Let's proceed, I said firmly. Lauren leaned forward, flipping through the documents. You've expressed a desire for full custody. Given the circumstances and the evidence we have, Maria's infidelity and her frequent absences, it's a reasonable request. Are you prepared for the potential pushback? I swallowed hard. Maria's a good mother, despite everything. But I can't risk the instability this situation creates for the kids. They need structure. They need me. Lauren gave a small nod. Understood. We'll emphasize that in court if it comes to that. Now, about the division of assets. As she continued, laying out the legal logistics of dismantling a life built together, my mind drifted to the past. The house Maria and I had chosen together, the vacations with the kids, the laughter that once filled our home. It all seemed so distant now. Back at home, the atmosphere was heavy. Maria and I were doing our best to keep things civil for the sake of the children, but every interaction was strained. We sat across the dining table, reviewing the custody agreement drafts. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she read through the papers. You're asking for full custody? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I said firmly. You can still see them on weekends, holidays. I'm not trying to cut you out, Maria, but the kids need stability. Her eyes welled up, and she looked away. So, you think I'm not stable? That I'm not a good mother? That's not what I said. I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting the frustration bubbling inside me. This isn't about punishing you. It's about what's best for Lily and Jake. What's best for them is having both parents in their lives. She shot back, her tone sharper now. They will, I said, my voice hardening. But let's not pretend everything's fine, Maria. They can feel the tension between us. They deserve a chance at a normal, happy childhood. Her silence was deafening. As the days turned into weeks, the kids began to notice the changes. Lily clung to me more than usual, her innocent questions cutting me deeper than any argument with Maria. "Why does Mommy sleep in the guest room now?" she asked one night as I tucked her in. I forced a smile, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out, sweetheart. But don't worry, everything will be okay." Jake was quieter, retreating into his video games and schoolwork. I tried to engage him, but he was distant, his usual spark dulled. It broke my heart. One evening, I found him sitting alone in the backyard, staring at the sky. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. He shrugged, and I sat down beside him. "Want to talk about what's on your mind?" He was quiet for a moment before he finally spoke. "Are you and Mom getting a divorce?" The question hit me like a freight train. I had been dreading this moment, but there was no use lying to him. "Yes," I said softly. "We are." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Is it because of Greg?" My breath caught. "Where did you hear that?" "I heard you and Mom arguing," he admitted, looking down at his hands. "I know what he did. He's not your friend anymore, is he?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "He's not. And none of this is your fault, Jake. Not yours or Lily's. This is between your mom and me." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. "I just want things to go back to the way they were." I pulled him into a hug, my chest tightening. "I know, buddy. I do too." The first court hearing was nerve-wracking. Maria and I sat on opposite sides, our lawyers doing most of the talking. The judge reviewed the custody proposal, asking pointed questions about our parenting roles and home environments. Maria's lawyer argued for joint custody, emphasizing her bond with the children. My stomach churned as they painted her as a devoted mother, downplaying her recent absences. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my voice steady, focusing on what mattered most. "Your Honor, my priority is my children's well-being. They've already been through so much, and I want to provide them with a stable, loving home. I'm not trying to alienate them from their mother, but I believe full custody is in their best interest." By the end of the hearing, the judge decided to assign a child custody evaluator to assess our situation further. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, but it was a step forward. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat on the couch, staring at the family photo on the mantel. Maria sat down across from me, her expression weary. "Do you hate me?" she asked quietly. I hesitated before answering. "I hate what you did, but hate you? No. We had good years, Maria. I'll always care about you because you're the mother of my children. But we can't go back." Tears slid down her cheeks, and she nodded. "I'm sorry, Daniel, for everything." I nodded back, my heart heavy. I know. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start toward acceptance. The custody evaluator, Dr. Evelyn Harper, was a poised woman in her late 40s, her sharp eyes seeming to see through every pretense. When I first met her, she greeted me with a firm handshake and a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Carter," she said, gesturing toward a small chair in her office. "This process is designed to prioritize the best interests of your children. My role is to observe, ask questions, and provide an unbiased recommendation to the court." I nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and resolve. I had nothing to hide. My life revolved around Lily and Jake, and I'd do whatever it took to prove I could provide them the stability they deserved. Dr. Harper opened a notebook, her pen poised. "Let's start with your perspective on the current situation. How have the children been adjusting?" "They're struggling," I admitted. "Lily's been asking a lot of questions, and Jake has become quieter than usual. I've tried to shield them from the worst of it, but they know something's wrong." "And how are you addressing their emotional needs?" she asked, her tone professional but not unkind. "I spend as much time with them as I can," I said. "We talk, we play, and I've been trying to keep their routines consistent. They're my priority." She nodded, jotting something down. And your relationship with their mother? How would you describe it now? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. It's strained. We're civil in front of the kids, but there's a lot of hurt on both sides. I won't lie to you, trust is broken. But I'm committed to co-parenting as best as we can. Dr. Harper's pen moved swiftly across the page. Thank you for your honesty. I'll be conducting home visits and speaking with the children individually in the coming weeks. This process can be invasive, but it's necessary to ensure a thorough evaluation. I left the meeting feeling like I just stepped off a tightrope, every word scrutinized and weighed. When Dr. Harper came to the house for the first time, I felt a mixture of pride and nerves. I had spent the previous evening cleaning every inch of the place, making sure it reflected a safe and welcoming environment for the kids. Lily greeted her with cautious curiosity. Are you the lady who's going to help us? Dr. Harper smiled warmly. That's right, Lily. I'm just here to learn about you and your brother, and how we can make things better for you. Jake was more reserved, offering a polite nod but avoiding eye contact. Would you like to show me your rooms? Dr. Harper asked, crouching slightly to meet them at their eye level. Lily grabbed her hand eagerly. Come on. I have a princess castle. I watched as the three of them disappeared down the hall, feeling a pang of both relief and unease. When Dr. Harper returned, she asked to observe me interacting with the kids. We played a board game in the living room, and I did my best to focus on the moment, even as I felt her eyes on me, silently assessing. Later, she sat with me in the kitchen, sipping the coffee I'd offered her. Your children are lovely, she said, her tone genuine. It's clear they feel secure with you. Thank you, I said, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. But transitions like this are never easy, she continued. Jake seems especially withdrawn. He might benefit from professional counseling to help him process his emotions. I nodded, filing the suggestion away. Anything to help him. Maria's home visit happened the following week. Lily and Jake mentioned it in passing, their descriptions painting a picture of a house filled with tension. Mom cried a lot, Lily said one evening as I tucked her in. Dr. Harper said it's okay to feel sad, but I don't like it when Mommy cries. My heart ached for them. They were too young to bear the weight of adult pain, yet here they were, caught in the crossfire. Jake's response was quieter but no less telling. Mom said she'll fight to keep us, he said bluntly. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Your mom loves you both very much, so do I. And no matter what happens, you'll always have both of us in your lives. He didn't respond, but I saw the doubt lingering in his eyes. The custody evaluator's final report was the next major hurdle. I sat across from Lauren in her office as she flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. Well, I prompted, my voice tight with anticipation. Lauren closed the file and looked up at me. The report is largely in your favor. Dr. Harper acknowledges your strong bond with the children and your ability to provide stability. She recommends primary custody to you, with visitation rights for Maria. I exhaled a shaky breath, a mix of relief and guilt washing over me. That said, Lauren continued, Maria's lawyer may challenge this in court. Be prepared for a fight. I will be, I said, my jaw tightening. At home that evening, I found Jake sitting at the kitchen table, doodling absent-mindedly on a scrap of paper. What are you drawing? I asked, sitting beside him. He shrugged. Just stuff. I leaned closer to see the page. He had drawn a house split down the middle, one half dark and stormy, the other bright and sunny. It's okay to feel like this, I said softly, wrapping an arm around his shoulder. He looked up at me, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. I just want to be happy again, Dad. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. You will be Jake. I promise. And for the first time, I felt that promise wasn't just for him, it was for me too. The courthouse was intimidating, its tall, gray facade looming over me as I stepped inside. The echoes of hushed voices and the shuffle of shoes on polished floors filled the air, each sound amplifying the weight of the day. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, my lawyer, Lauren, beside me. She was scanning her notes with the calm precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. I, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves, my foot tapping incessantly against the marble floor. "Relax, Daniel," Lauren said without looking up. "You're well prepared. Dr. Harper's report is a strong point in our favor." I nodded, but her words did little to calm me. Today wasn't just about paperwork or legal arguments. It was about my children, my family. The double doors to the courtroom swung open, and Maria stepped out. Her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Cynthia Reynolds, was at her side, speaking in hushed tones. Maria glanced at me, her expression a mixture of determination and sorrow. I looked away. "Mr. Carter," a bailiff called, gesturing for us to enter. I stood, taking a deep breath. "Here we go," I muttered. Lauren gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "We've got this." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but its atmosphere was heavy. The judge, a stern-looking man with a thick gray mustache, presided over the proceedings with an air of authority. Lauren began our case by presenting the evidence. Dr. Harper's report, testimonies about my parenting, and details of Maria's absences during her affair. "Your Honor," Lauren said, her voice steady, "the evidence clearly shows that Mr. Carter provides a stable, nurturing environment for the children. He has prioritized their well-being throughout this difficult period and seeks to minimize further disruption to their lives." Maria's lawyer countered with her own arguments, painting Maria as a devoted mother who had made a mistake but remained deeply connected to her children. "While my client acknowledges her actions," Cynthia said smoothly, "she has been a loving and attentive mother. The children's bond with her is undeniable, and joint custody would allow them to maintain a balanced relationship with both parents." Maria's eyes flickered toward me during the speech, as if silently pleading. I kept my gaze fixed on the judge. The testimonies were the most grueling part. Maria spoke first, her voice shaking as she described her love for Lily and Jake and her regret over her choices. "I know I made mistakes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But my children are my world. I would do anything for them. When it was my turn, I focused on the kids. I spoke about Jake's withdrawal, Lily's questions, and my efforts to provide them with consistency. They've been through so much already," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I want to give them a sense of normalcy, a safe place where they can heal. I'm not trying to take them away from their mother. I just want what's best for them." The judge listened intently, his expression unreadable. Toward the end of the hearing, Dr. Harper was called to testify. Her calm, authoritative demeanor filled the room. "In my evaluation," she said, "both parents demonstrated love and concern for their children. However, it's clear that the children have been most secure in Mr. Carter's care. His home environment provides the stability they need during this challenging time." Maria's lawyer attempted to undermine Dr. Harper's conclusions, but she remained firm. "My recommendations are based on thorough observations and interviews," she said. "The children's well-being must take precedence over all else." After hours of arguments and counterarguments, the judge finally announced a recess. The courtroom emptied, leaving me and Lauren to sit in tense silence. Maria was across the hall, her face pale as she whispered with Cynthia. When we were called back in, the judge wasted no time delivering his verdict. "After careful consideration of the evidence and testimonies presented," he began, "I am awarding primary custody of the children to Mr. Daniel Carter, with scheduled visitation rights for Ms. Maria Carter." Relief flooded through me, but it was bittersweet. I glanced at Maria. Her face crumpled as tears spilled down her cheeks. The judge's gavel fell, signaling the end of the hearing. Outside the courthouse, Lauren and I stood in the crisp afternoon air. "You did great in there," she said, her tone lighter now that the tension had passed. "Thanks, Lauren," I said, my voice tired but grateful. As she walked away, Maria approached me, her eyes red and swollen. For a moment, we stood in silence, the weight of everything between us unspoken. "Congratulations," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "This isn't a win for me, Maria," I replied. "It's about the kids." That's all it's ever been about. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. I hope we can make this work. For them. We will, I said firmly. They need both of us, even if we're not together. Maria gave a small, sad smile before turning to leave. As I watched her go, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the one I had to navigate now. For Lily and Jake, I would make it work. The first morning as the sole custodian of Lily and Jake dawned quietly. The house, though filled with the usual morning chaos of cereal bowls clinking and school bags being packed, felt different. There was a palpable shift in the air, an unspoken awareness that life had irreversibly changed. Dad, where's my science notebook? Jake called out from his room. I jogged upstairs, rummaging through a pile of books on his desk. Right here, buddy. Try to keep it in your bag next time. Thanks, he muttered, already absorbed in organizing his pencil case. Meanwhile, Lily sat at the kitchen table, humming to herself as she braided her doll's hair. She looked up as I entered. Daddy, can we have pancakes tomorrow? Pancakes? I raised an eyebrow. Didn't you just say cereal is your favorite? She grinned mischievously. Cereal is good, but pancakes are better. Noted, I said, ruffling her hair. It was moments like these small, ordinary exchanges that reminded me why I had fought so hard for custody. My children needed stability, and I was determined to provide it, even as I navigated the challenges of single parenthood. The first major hurdle came that evening. Jake was unusually quiet at dinner, pushing his spaghetti around his plate. Lily, ever the chatterbox, didn't seem to notice as she recounted her day at school. Jake, I said gently, everything okay? He shrugged, avoiding eye contact. Lily piped up. Tommy was mean to Jake today. He said his parents don't like each other anymore. Jake shot her a glare. Shut up, Lily. Hey! I interjected firmly. We don't talk to each other like that. Lily crossed her arms, pouting, while Jake stared at his plate, his face a storm of conflicting emotions. Jake, I said softly, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything. He hesitated before finally meeting my eyes. It's just, everyone at school knows about the divorce. They keep asking questions, and I don't know what to say. My chest tightened. I'm sorry you're going through that, buddy. Divorce is hard, and people can be nosy. But you don't owe anyone an explanation. If someone asks, just tell them it's between your mom and me, and leave it at that. He nodded, though the sadness lingered in his eyes. Can we watch a movie tonight? Lily asked, breaking the tension. Sure, I said, grateful for the distraction. You two pick. But no arguing over the choice. They both smiled, and for a moment, the heaviness lifted. Over the next few weeks, we settled into a new rhythm. Mornings were filled with rushed breakfasts and last-minute homework checks, while evenings became our time to reconnect. We established a tradition of family game nights on Fridays and movie marathons on Saturdays. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when the weight of it all felt unbearable, when work demands piled up, when the kids fought over the smallest things, when loneliness crept in during the quiet moments after they went to bed. One evening, I found myself staring at the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, feeling utterly overwhelmed. I missed the partnership Maria and I had once shared, the comfort of knowing someone else was in the trenches with me. But then I'd hear Lily's laughter from the living room or catch Jake concentrating intensely on his latest Lego creation, and I'd remember why I was doing this. Maria's weekend visits were a mixed bag. The kids were always excited to see her, but the transition back to my house was often rocky. One Sunday evening, after Maria dropped them off, Jake slammed his bedroom door shut without a word. I knocked gently before entering. What's going on, buddy? He was sitting on his bed, hugging his knees. I don't like it when Mom leaves, he admitted, his voice small. I sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. I know it's hard, but she loves you and Lily very much. Even though she doesn't live here anymore, she's still your mom. It's not the same, he muttered. No, it's not, I agreed. But we're figuring this out together. Okay? One step at a time. He leaned into me, and I wrapped an arm around him, holding him close. Meanwhile, Lily was adjusting in her own way. She started drawing pictures of our family. Me, her, Jake, and even Maria, but they always seemed incomplete. Why don't you draw everyone together? I asked one evening as I admired her latest creation. She looked up at me with wide eyes. Because we're not together anymore. Mommy and you live in different houses. Her words, so simple yet profound, hit me hard. That's true, I said carefully. But we're still a family, even if we're not all in the same place. She nodded thoughtfully before adding a bright yellow sun to her drawing. The weeks turned into months, and slowly we found our footing. I started attending a support group for single parents, where I met others navigating similar challenges. Their stories reminded me that I wasn't alone in this journey. At the same time, I sought out a therapist for Jake and Lily, hoping to give them the tools they needed to process their emotions. One night, after a particularly lively game of Uno, Jake looked up at me with a rare smile. "You're doing okay, Dad," he said. I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Thanks, kiddo. That means a lot." And in that moment I realized we were going to be okay. Not perfect, not without challenges, but okay. Maria's visitation weekends became a point of contention, not just for the kids but for her as well. She had been late picking them up more than once, citing traffic or last-minute work emergencies. The kids noticed, and so did I. It wasn't the lateness itself that bothered me. It was the pattern. "Maria," I said one Friday evening as she arrived nearly an hour behind schedule, her face flushed with guilt. "We need to talk." She glanced at Lily and Jake, who were already buckling themselves into her car. "Not now, Daniel. Please." "Yes, now," I insisted, stepping closer but keeping my voice low. "This isn't fair to them. They look forward to these weekends. And when you're late, it throws everything off." Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I saw the exhaustion etched into her face. "I know," she said softly. "I'm trying, okay? Work's been overwhelming, and—" "Work?" I interrupted, my frustration bubbling over. "It's always work. Maria, they're your kids. They need you to show up. Fully. Not just physically, but emotionally too." She flinched, and guilt flickered in her eyes. "I'm doing my best, Daniel." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Your best needs to be better. For them." She didn't respond, but her silence said enough. The following weekend, the kids returned from Maria's house quieter than usual. Jake headed straight to his room, while Lily lingered in the living room, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, sitting down beside her. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated before whispering, "Mommy cried a lot this weekend." My heart sank. "Did she tell you why?" Lily shook her head. "She just said she missed us." I pulled her into a hug, kissing the top of her head. "It's okay to miss people. And it's okay to talk about it if you want to." She nodded against my chest, but her words lingered with me long after she fell asleep that night. Maria called me later that week, her voice unusually subdued. "Daniel," she began, "can we talk?" "Sure," I said cautiously. "What's going on?" She hesitated, and I could hear her take a deep breath before continuing. "I feel like I'm losing them, the kids. Every time I see them, they're more distant. Jake barely talks to me anymore, and Lily, she looks at me like she doesn't trust me." I closed my eyes, leaning back against the couch. "Maria, this isn't something that's going to fix itself overnight. You made choices that hurt them, and it's going to take time to rebuild that trust." "I know," she said, her voice breaking, "but I don't know how to fix it. I feel like I've already failed them." "You haven't failed," I said, surprising even myself with the sincerity of my words. "But you need to be consistent. Be there when you say you'll be there. Show them you're still their mom, no matter what." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "Do you think it's too late?" "No," I said firmly. "It's never too late. But it's up to you to put in the work." In the weeks that followed, Maria made a noticeable effort. She arrived on time for her visits and even started planning activities that the kids enjoyed. Slowly, the tension between her and Jake began to ease, though he remained more guarded than Lily. One Saturday evening, Maria called me after dropping the kids off. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "For not giving up on me. For reminding me that I can do better." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to remind her that this wasn't about us. It was about the kids. But another part of me recognized the vulnerability in her voice and the courage it took to admit her mistakes. "You're their mom," I said simply. "That's never going to change." Despite Maria's progress, life as a single parent was far from easy. Work deadlines loomed, school projects piled up, and there were days when I felt like I was barely keeping my head above water. One evening, Jake came to me with a school assignment, a family tree project. "Can I include Mom and you on the same branch?" he asked hesitantly. I knelt beside him, studying the blank tree on the poster board. "Of course you can. We're still a family, Jake. Just a different kind of family now." His lips quirked into a small smile. "Thanks, Dad." As we worked on the project together, I realized how far we'd come. The wounds were still there, but they were healing slowly but surely. One Sunday afternoon, I took the kids to the park. As I watched them climb the jungle gym, their laughter echoing through the crisp autumn air, I felt a rare sense of peace. Maria showed up unexpectedly, waving from the parking lot. The kids ran to her, their faces lighting up as they hugged her tightly. I stayed back, giving them space. Watching her interact with them, I saw glimpses of the woman I had once loved. The one who could light up a room with her smile and make our children feel like they were the center of the universe. She caught my eye and gave me a small, tentative wave. I nodded back, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile truce we had built. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope, not for a reconciliation, but for a future where we could coexist peacefully, united by our love for Lily and Jake. The kids were at Maria's for the weekend, and for the first time in months, I found myself alone in the house. The silence was deafening. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the cup of coffee in my hands, wondering how to fill the hours. I had spent so much of my time focused on Lily and Jake that I hadn't considered what my life outside of parenting might look like. Now, with an entire weekend ahead of me, the emptiness was unavoidable. I texted Sean, a coworker who had been bugging me to come out for a drink since the divorce proceedings started. "Hey, you still up for that drink?" His response was almost immediate. "Sean, finally, meet me at O'Malley's at 8. I glanced at the clock. It was barely noon. Plenty of time to talk myself out of it, I thought. But as the hours crept by, I realized I didn't want to back out. O'Malley's was a cozy pub downtown, its dim lighting and warm wood accents giving it a laid-back vibe. Sean waved me over from a booth near the back, grinning like a kid on Christmas. "Look who decided to join the living," he teased as I slid into the seat across from him. Yeah, I said, rolling my eyes. "Don't make a big deal out of it." He signaled the waiter, ordering us both a round of beer. "How are things with the kids?" "Good," I said, surprising myself with the answer. "It's been tough, but we're finding our rhythm." "And Maria?" I hesitated before answering. "She's trying. We're not exactly friends, but we're co-parenting better than I expected." Sean nodded thoughtfully. "That's good. The kids need both of you, even if it's in separate houses." The conversation drifted to work, sports, and random jokes, and for the first time in months, I felt a weight lift. As the night wore on, I noticed a woman sitting at the bar, her dark curls framing a striking face. She was laughing with a friend, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. Sean caught me looking and smirked. "You should go talk to her." I laughed, shaking my head. "Not happening." "Why not? You're single. She's single. What's the worst that could happen?" I sighed. "Sean, I'm not exactly in a place to date right now. My life's a mess. All the more reason to start living it again," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "Think about it. That night, as I lay in bed, Sean's words echoed in my mind. I wasn't ready to dive into a relationship, but maybe he was right. It was time to start reclaiming parts of myself that had been lost in the chaos. The next day, I signed up for a local photography class. It was something I had always been interested in but had put off for years. The class met on Thursday evenings at a community center. The instructor, Claire, was an energetic woman in her early 40s with a passion for teaching. Photography isn't just about capturing images, she said during the first session. It's about seeing the world differently, finding beauty in the everyday. Her words resonated with me. As I experimented with angles and lighting, I found myself losing track of time, immersed in the creative process. One evening, as I was reviewing shots of a city skyline, Claire peered over my shoulder. "Nice composition," she said, nodding approvingly. "You've got a good eye." "Thanks," I said, feeling a flicker of pride. "You ever think about doing this professionally?" I laughed. "No, this is just a hobby. My kids are my full-time job." Claire smiled. "Well, hobbies have a way of surprising you. Keep at it." The class became my escape, a space where I could focus on something purely for myself. Over time, I started sharing my photos with Lily and Jake, who were fascinated by the idea of turning everyday scenes into art. "Can we try it too, Dad?" Lily asked one Saturday morning. "Of course," I said, handing her my old camera. We spent the afternoon exploring the park, snapping pictures of trees, squirrels, and each other. Jake, initially reluctant, eventually joined in, capturing a surprisingly artistic shot of Lily mid-laugh. "This is fun," he admitted later, showing me the photo. "It is," I said, smiling. "Maybe we'll make a family project out of it." One evening, as I was sorting through my photos, I received a text from Maria. "Maria, I heard from Lily about your photography thing. Sounds cool. It's been a nice change of pace. The kids love it too. Maria, maybe you could show me some of your work sometime." I hesitated before replying. Sure. Maybe. Her interest in my life felt strange, but I decided not to dwell on it. As the weeks passed, I started to feel more like myself. The weight of the divorce still lingered, but it no longer defined me. One evening after class, Claire stopped me as I was packing up. "Daniel," she said, "there's a community gallery hosting a showcase next month. You should submit something." "Me?" I said, startled. "I'm not ready for that." "Why not?" she asked, her tone encouraging. "You've got talent, and it's a great way to put yourself out there." I promised to think about it, though the idea both excited and terrified me. As I drove home, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. The weeks leading up to the gallery showcase were a whirlwind. Between work, parenting, and editing my photos, I hardly had a moment to catch my breath. But there was something exhilarating about seeing my work come to life. The gallery had accepted 2 of my photos, a moody shot of the city skyline at dusk, and a candid picture of Lily and Jake laughing together on a park bench. The curator had loved the natural warmth in the latter, calling it a poignant snapshot of joy amidst life's unpredictability. "Proud of you, Dad," Jake said one evening as I showed him the framed prints. "Yeah," Lily chimed in. "You're like a real artist now." Their enthusiasm warmed me, though I couldn't shake a lingering unease. Maria had been unusually quiet lately, her messages brief and infrequent. When she arrived for her next visitation, I decided to ask. Maria stepped into the house, her eyes darting around as if she were searching for something. "You okay?" I asked, crossing my arms. She hesitated, then sighed. "Can we talk for a minute?" I glanced at the kids, who were packing their overnight bags. "Sure." "Kitchen." She nodded, and we moved into the kitchen, where she leaned against the counter, her arms crossed tightly. "I've been meaning to tell you something," she began, her voice low. "It's about Greg." The name hit me like a slap, though I tried to keep my expression neutral. "What about him?" She looked down, fidgeting with her bracelet. "He reached out to me a few weeks ago. He wants to reconnect." My jaw tightened. "Reconnect? After everything?" "I know," she said quickly. I told him I wasn't interested, that my priority is the kids. But, she hesitated, her voice trembling. He's been persistent. He showed up at my apartment last week. What? My voice rose, anger flaring. Maria, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want to drag you into it, she said, her eyes glistening. But now I'm scared he won't leave me alone. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Have you thought about getting a restraining order? I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to escalate things, but I needed to tell you in case he tries to involve the kids somehow. The thought sent a chill down my spine. If he comes anywhere near them, I'll handle it, I said firmly. Maria nodded, wiping away a stray tear. Thank you, Daniel. For a moment, the tension between us dissolved, replaced by a shared concern for our children. That evening, after the kids had left with Maria, I sat alone in the living room, my mind racing. Greg's shadow loomed large over my life once again, threatening the fragile peace I had worked so hard to build. I picked up my phone and dialed Sean. Hey man, he answered, his tone upbeat. Sean, I said, my voice tight. I need a favor. The next day, Sean met me at a coffee shop, his easygoing demeanor replaced by a rare seriousness. So, what's the deal? He asked, sipping his espresso. I told him everything. Greg's persistence, Maria's fear, and my own unease. Sounds like a classic stalker situation, Sean said, frowning. You need to shut this down, Daniel. The guy's a wild card. I know, I said, running a hand through my hair. But I don't want to make things worse for Maria or the kids. Sean leaned back, considering. Well, you could start by making it clear to Greg that he's not welcome. Sometimes a direct approach works. The idea of confronting Greg again made my stomach churn. But I knew Sean was right. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. That Friday, as I was leaving work, I spotted Greg standing by my car in the parking lot. Daniel, he said, his tone almost casual. I stopped in my tracks, every muscle in my body tensing. What the hell are you doing here? Relax, he said, raising his hands. I just wanted to talk. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here, I said, my voice low and cold. Greg shifted uncomfortably but held his ground. Look, I screwed up. Okay? I admit that. But I miss Maria, and I thought maybe… Stop, I interrupted, stepping closer. You don't get to maybe your way back into her life or mine. You've done enough damage. Stay away from her, and stay away from my kids. His expression hardened. She's not your property, Daniel. She can make her own decisions. You're right, I said, my voice steady. But if you care about her at all, you'll leave her alone. She's trying to rebuild her life, and you're only making it harder. For a moment, Greg seemed to falter, his bravado cracking. Without another word, he turned and walked away. That evening, I called Maria to let her know what had happened. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know what I would have done if he'd tried something with the kids around. We'll figure it out, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. The gallery showcase arrived a week later, and I was determined not to let Greg's shadow dim the moment. Lily and Jake stood proudly by my side as I showed them the framed prints on display. Look, it's us, Lily exclaimed, pointing to the photo of them on the park bench. Jake grinned. You made us famous, Dad. I laughed, pulling them into a hug. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Not just for the photos, but for how far we'd come as a family. As I looked around the gallery, taking in the laughter and conversation, I realized something. The past might cast long shadows, but it didn't have to define the future. The days following the gallery showcase felt lighter, as if a storm had finally passed. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt manageable. The kids were thriving. Maria was keeping her distance from Greg, and I had found a sense of purpose beyond just getting through the day. Still, there were loose ends to tie up, and I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. Maria called one evening after the kids were asleep. Her voice was calm, almost hesitant. Daniel, she began. "I just wanted to say thank you. For everything." "Everything," I echoed, leaning back on the couch. "For standing up to Greg. For being patient with me. For reminding me what really matters." I didn't respond immediately, letting her words hang in the air. Finally, I said, "I didn't do it for you, Maria. I did it for the kids." "I know," she said softly. "But it helped me too. I've started seeing a therapist. I need to work on myself if I'm going to be the mom they deserve." Her admission caught me off guard. "That's good," I said finally. "I hope it helps." "It already has," she said. "I'm learning to let go of the guilt, to stop looking backward. It's not easy, but I'm trying." We talked for a while longer, not as ex-spouses but as two people united by their love for Lily and Jake. It was the most honest conversation we'd had since the divorce, and when I hung up, I felt a strange sense of peace. A week later, Maria and I attended Lily's school recital together. She had been practicing her piano piece for weeks, and the pride on her face as she took the stage was contagious. Maria and I sat side by side in the audience, clapping enthusiastically as Lily played. "She's amazing," Maria whispered, her eyes shining. "She gets it from you," I replied, surprising both of us. Maria smiled, and for the first time it didn't feel forced. After the recital, we took Lily and Jake out for ice cream, laughing together like we hadn't in years. It wasn't a return to the way things used to be. It was something new, something tentative but hopeful. In the months that followed, I found myself stepping further into uncharted territory. The photography class had turned into a small freelance gig, with a local magazine commissioning me to shoot a spread on the city's hidden gems. One afternoon, while editing photos at a cafe, Claire, the photography instructor, walked in. She spotted me and waved, her smile as warm as ever. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, holding her coffee. "Not at all," I said, clearing a space at the table. As we chatted about the project, I realized how easy it was to talk to her. There was no pretense, no pressure, just a genuine connection. "Have you thought about doing this full-time?" she asked, gesturing to the photos on my laptop. I laughed. "You're the second person to ask me that. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of leap." Claire tilted her head, studying me. "Sometimes the scariest leaps are the ones worth taking." Her words stayed with me long after she left. Meanwhile, the kids were settling into the new normal. Jake had started a coding club at school, and Lily was exploring her love for art. We spent weekends taking photos, painting, and experimenting with new hobbies. One Saturday, as we were walking through the park, Lily grabbed my hand. "Dad, are we happy now?" she asked, her voice full of childlike curiosity. I knelt beside her, looking into her wide, questioning eyes. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think we are." She smiled, and for the first time I truly believed it. The following week, I received an email from the community gallery inviting me to participate in a second showcase. This time, I didn't hesitate to accept. The night of the event, Maria brought the kids, and I was surprised to see Claire there too. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, smiling as she approached. She shrugged playfully. "Couldn't miss the chance to see my star student shine." The evening was a blur of compliments, laughter, and a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in years. Toward the end of the night, as I stood beside my photo of Lily and Jake, Maria approached me. "They're so proud of you," she said, gesturing to the kids, who were showing off the picture to a group of onlookers. "They're my inspiration," I said simply. Maria hesitated, then added, "I'm proud of you too, Daniel. You've built something beautiful out of all of this." "Thanks," I said, meeting her gaze. "It wasn't easy, but it was worth it." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's good to see you happy." "You too," I replied, and for the first time I meant it. As the gallery emptied and the kids fell asleep in the car, I realized how far we'd come. The road ahead wasn't without its challenges, but it was one I was ready to face. We were no longer the family we once were, but in its place we had built something resilient, something real. And as I looked back at my sleeping children, I knew that no matter what, we would always have each other. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.